This is the daily writing exercise, recorded day 44, titled Vallom, Abbey. And thus, ladies and gentlemen, there was the man with no plan, who figured he'd plan his way through the war, only to be knee-deep in it and with no way out. Private Saul was not the brightest of boys. He was in fact a little bit too clever for his own good, and tended to get himself into troublesome situations, even when the situation did not call for it. It was thus that he found himself one late July afternoon, drinking a lemonade with a couple of friends. Ways to get in and out of the army were being discussed, seeing as it was painfully clear one or a few of them were likely to be drafted. The only question was who, and when, and where they were going to be sent. Peter passionately argued for the Pacific. The weather was simply better there, and he would hate it to be stuck in the snow fighting the Germans for weeks on end. John did not really like the snow and figured Europe was best, because, well, as he had heard his brother say, the women were practically throwing themselves at them, and John very much wanted something of that sort to be thrown at him. Peter retorted John's argument by throwing an empty can towards him and said, "There are women in the Pacific too, you dimwit." "Yes, but they are likely to be Italian, will they?" John said after dodging the can. "My mother would like it if I married a nice Italian girl." "Your mother would hate it," Frank said, mixing himself into the conversation. "I mean the way she treats Frederica." "Oh, shut up," John said. "What do you know about it?" "What do you mean, what do I know about it?" Frank laughingly exclaimed. "Don't act like you don't know. Everybody knows." "She's not even really Italian anyway," John said sullenly. "Yeah, well," Frank concluded by slapping him on his back, "don't think marrying a genuine one is going to make your mother any better." "Speaking of mothers," John said, turning the conversation away from him towards Saul, "I'm guessing your mother will want you to marry some Jewish girl?" Saul shrugged. "I guess." "Find anyone yet?" Peter asked. "Not really," Saul answered. "You know," Peter continued, "now that I think of it, I don't actually think I know that many Jews." "I mean, you know Saul," John said. "Yeah, but that doesn't count," Peter said. "I mean, where do you even meet Jewish women?" Saul sputtered and kicked the can that lay on the ground. "You don't," he answered. "Jewish women meet you. I don't know how they do it, but they tend to suddenly be there, often being introduced by some distant supposed relative of yours." "That must suck," Peter said. Saul shrugged. "I don't know." "Well," John concluded, "that will be for something after the war, right? Now we first must fight and come back home with a chest full of medals. Then we can get whatever girl we want, be it Jewish, Italian, or whatever." The boys laughed for a good bit. It ended a bit more somber as the reality of war dragged itself back into their consciousness. It was not a pleasant thing to think of, especially for Saul, who had no inclination of going, or at the very least, staying for very long. His plan was simple. Rather than wait for the draft, Saul figured he'd sign up, and, during his training, finagle his way through the system and onto an outpost somewhere where there was no fighting or any war. Some remote corner in the world where he could play pretend hero and sit back from all the death that surrounded him every day. He could come home and marry whatever Jewish girl his family likely already had picked out for him, and he could live an unassumed and unimportant life without a chest full of medals. That is what Saul wanted, and that he was determined to get. No more has been written or recorded. Thank you for listening.